This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
The Council on Aging meeting is resumed, and we did approve the minutes, and we did public speak, and now we're talking about number 4A. Okay. So
again, yes. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So what I can say for those who were not at City Council on April 8th or have not read the minutes, or there may even have been a news report after that City Council meeting. At that meeting, the mayor phrased the situation with the new senior center feasibility study being the next step as the city won't be doing a new senior center project. And he just said senior center. He didn't mention Parks and Recreation until the high school is paid off, is what he said. I don't know when that will be. And he didn't say specifically there would be no funding of a feasibility study before the high school is paid off or in the lead up to the high school being paid off. So there wasn't any detail on that.
When I went to the mayor's coffee forum, I can quote him. He said when he started speaking, he said about the new senior center, we're not going to appropriate. He mentioned $100 and something thousand for a feasibility study. That's not going to happen. And then he went on to talk about the other things I mentioned at the last meeting. So I didn't know that anybody was still waiting for that information, or I would have mentioned that at the March meeting. Sorry.
It's there's that, but also there was the last time I met with Mayor one-to-one, the conversation was, before that was before the high school is paid off, as the cost of the high school to the taxpayers is coming down, there's a pocket you could slip a new capital project into. But because of the budget difficulties and the city government's hope that there would be an override to pay for those budget difficulties, he referred to that to say the pocket to put in another capital project would be once the high school is paid off. That's even though I don't know how many years that is, and maybe somebody else here does, that's a very long time compared to what we have been talking about since La Chapelle formed the ad hoc committee. That's a much longer period of time to be at the senior center that we're at now. So that we don't want to spend too much time on this because we want to get to the next part. But just in case, so I did ask the mayor, would he like to come here today and explain this a little bit more? But no. So that the next part that we have to.
But Tom had a comment.
Oh yeah.
So I think Crystal's right. He did say he's not going to appropriate the 100,000. And secondly, I believe at that meeting, we suspended any future meetings until the picture became clearer with the budget, which it's pretty clear we're going to be going for an override. I wish I knew more of the ins and outs of how this all works, but I'm not so sure about tying it to the payoff of the debt exclusion, because I don't think anybody in this room or in the city has ever seen their taxes go down
No,
when debt exclusion gets paid off.
absolutely not.
Because our taxes go up 2.5% every year. So by the time you pay off the debt exclusion, you're back where you started.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what the mayor might be saying is, I just don't want to add another thing when we're currently paying for two schools. But if the economic outlook was much better for the city and he could appropriate the 100,000 and we move forward, I think we'd move forward with the debt exclusion for the senior center, regardless of where we were with the schools. Because if you waited 10 years, my taxes have gone up 2.5% for that 10 years. It's never going to go down. So there's no logical reason, in my opinion, why you wait for a debt exclusion to go down. I think,
The
Well,
taxpayers, he's
well-
trying to make them feel better about it.
yeah, but it doesn't work that way, I don't think, mechanically. And secondly,
From a
debt
math
ex- the,
perspective.
the override that we're going to be asking for, unfortunately, is forever. That's what's different with an override. A debt exclusion does go away, but I don't think you ever see your taxes go down. The override that we're going to be asking for is never going to go away. That's going to be built into your taxes as long as you own your home. Sorry.
Any other comments on this? Okay. We'll go ahead and move forward to the next topic then on Parks and Recreation.
Yep.
And with John Mason, thank you for coming today and
Thank you for having me.
lead us with this discussion.
I'm John Mason, the Parks and Recreation Director, and I attended the meeting back in the 30th when the building committee met. And there was a lot of discussion about recreation complex, senior center, things like that. And a proposal that was put together by the mayor. And it was, I appreciate his thought of thinking of Parks and Rec and a rec center. But as this department and the commission as a whole, we understand that you guys have been in this game of trying to get a senior center much longer than us. Our main focus has been maintenance building, but getting something on top of it and a multi-use facility is something we are interested in. But with respect to that, we sent a letter off, and I believe you folks got a copy of the letter, just saying that if there's going to be discussions further about a multi-complex facility, we would rather sit at the table with you folks and have those discussions to make sure your needs are taken care of. Our needs were a little robust in the presentation from the mayor, especially on the maintenance side. That's, if you look at the square footage, there's stuff that we would be willing to certainly take out of, things that were designated recreation space. So I just want to make sure that if you guys, are interested in moving forward, which I think it is a worthwhile discussion. And we're also to the understanding that if anything went forward for a feasibility study, it would be two-pronged. Council on Aging, standalone, recreation complex. So we understand that as well and support that to make sure we don't want to deviate from what your needs are and concerns are. And if it can be enhanced by adding recreation space and maybe a gym, we're all in on that as well. So I just want to make sure. Cindy and I have met 3 times. I think we have like every 2 weeks we're meeting to making sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. I think this is worthwhile for the entire community to be a part of. And if at the end of the day, we don't get any part of that space, I still feel that we went through the right process to get to where we need to be as a city. So, I just want to make sure you guys hear that directly from me, representing the department and the commission, that, we would be, if it does reconvene the building study committee, that we would certainly would be glad to sit at the table and look at, what your guys' needs and look at how our space could fit into that.
Any comments? Tom?
I think I agree with you. But one of the points I made at that meeting was that I think I tried to remind the mayor that this was a senior center building committee. And the people we put around the table had various backgrounds, but all focused on a new senior center. And if it was going to become a joint project, we needed to put people around the table that had the expertise with Park and Rec. We don't know what the building would look like. We don't know about design. We don't know the needs, sizes, whatever. So the mayor would either have to consider appointing those people to this committee or going back to square one and creating a senior center park and rec building committee, which would put the right expertise around the table. You can't build a park and rec facility with senior center people around the table, just like you can't build a senior center with park and rec people around it. You gotta have the right people around the table.
This is a good chance while John is here, you know, for people to ask anything or state anything that they're thinking about that would help us clarify where, you know, are we parallel play in a building like that? Do we overlap? Do you have any questions that, you know, would make it?
Been a long-standing, oh, sorry.
Patrick and Crystal.
I was one of the strange people who a couple of years back said that we should combine with you guys to put together some type of facility that would work. I already know the answer, but I'll ask anyway. County room in the park that we could put a senior center.
We specifically said Daily Field.
Yeah, I
You
did.
said Daily Field.
I did say.
Yeah, well, you can tear down the high school, because that's part of the high school project, was us to sign an agreement that the high school technically has daily field during school hours.
No, and I knew that, but I was trying to bring us together somehow, you know, before it became a thing. And I just don't know. I mean, you would know better, and we've sat with people in the room as far as who knows the park, but you know the park, I think, better than anybody up there. And I'm assuming there isn't really a spot up there. If we wanted to build something, there really isn't a good spot.
I like the Park Street location. I really do.
Yeah.
It abuts the park.
Yeah.
The Council on Aging, you know, is in our park all summer long.
Right.
You know, so I mean, they're the walking club, the bocce, the pool, you know, the van's always in there, and it's a wonderful resource. So to be able to have that resource right in the backyard, and be able to be attached to Nantucket Park, I think would be a win for this project. One of the things I didn't mention was, you know, if this did become a recreation senior center complex, whatever you want to call it, we would be looking at being the night staff of it to be able to. So if there was programming that the seniors were looking for in the evening, it would be Park and Rec staff to make sure it was open facility, whether it's a paint and sip or whatever, you know, whatever it may be. And then also if the gymnasium, if there is one, that we would be looking to, you know, utilize it for the town teams first, but also looking as a revenue source to offset cost of maintenance and operations. And in the wintertime, especially, you know, when I have two maintenance full-time year-round staff, we would be in there to assist on the daily maintenance of mopping, sweeping, bathrooms, and doing those types of things would be part of what we'd expect my staff to do. So it would be a real partnership and collaboration. And I think the current one we have, not only with Council on Aging, but Cindy can speak to this, but as a whole within all departments in the city, there really is cooperation at every level with every department head. We're all in this together. We're really going to be all in this together in a couple of months. But you know, it's a great group. I'm the longest tenured department head in the city, so I've seen a lot come and go. But what's been pretty consistent is no matter who's in a leadership position, we're all willing to help each other out to do its best. So that speaks volume for the community and the people that are placed in charge. And I wouldn't see that changing one bit. One of our flaws is always we say yes to everybody. Yeah, we need some. Yeah. So we'll help out whatever you need. Yeah, you know. But it's how we operate, and we would certainly continue to operate that way.
Thank you.
Crystal?
I've visited a few senior centers that are partnered with recreation departments. And from my perspective, like my age group, I think it's fantastic. I think it's very, very successful. The only naysayers that I've come upon are some seniors. So some of the seniors really feel like they don't want intergenerational activities. So can you envision like a time of the day that the building, if it was a joint building, would have time just for seniors?
I would say until 4 o'clock or 3:30 would be in straight to seniors.
Well, I think that would probably clear up a lot of the next school year.
And that's one of the things, I talked about was that it would be basically a senior center until, except for the summertime, the gymnasium, if there's weather concerns, but Camp Montauk would come inside for that. But the Monday through Friday, and even on the weekends, if this had a fitness center, say, and there's basketball all weekends, that would be open to seniors to be able to come in on Saturdays and Sundays and use that as well and have, the building available to them. Our goal would be that this would be especially in the wintertime, a 7-day operation and 12 hours a day, pretty much. And there's going to be, we're going to have to offset costs by doing some programming outside and some in renting, but I got an email over the weekend. There's people always looking to rent space, and it's getting tighter and tighter as more schools are consolidating. So that it's shrinking the amount of space that's available. So that's something that we would definitely be understanding of that. This would be a senior, but I will be over at South Hadley Thursday, meeting with Andy Rogers, because of their financial situation that they're dealing with in South Hadley with their override that didn't pass, and what potentially coming down our way. I'm meeting with him to see how he's laying out his facility, his programming, and how he's going to manage that, to kind of get a feel from someone who's in the thick of it before we're officially in the thick of it. So I will be over there. I've been over to that facility a few times. I think it's a great facility.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I really like it a lot over there. So yeah, we'll get a better understanding.
So one of our favorite sites that was discounted because of traffic was Hoyok Street. Flat site, easily accessible, but a lot of issues with traffic coming out between the Mountain and Hendrick Street and East Street. If Park Street's at the front door of the park, Hoyok Street's at the back door. Just popped into my head while you were talking. It might take engineers and people smarter than you and I, but is there any way those vehicles, if this was on Hoyok Street, could exit through the park and maybe have an entrance only on Hoyok Street? So there's no traffic coming back out. So you can get to Hoyok Street, you drive in a senior center, but you drive out the back door through the park.
So there's the gate at Brook Street currently that comes into the park. I don't know how that would connect into where you would be.
Well, you know where David Boyle's property is.
Yeah,
right next door to David.
Yeah. And that there's water over there. There's tributaries and things. Yeah, there's things where if you went further down Brook Street, comes back in, but the neighbors aren't too happy about traffic, especially, people park there when the park is closed in the wintertime. They park on the road there. And then
I guess I was thinking of a direct access from the Oak Street site into the park, not down Brook Street, but direct.
If it was feasible, I wouldn't see a concern.
So, this is the property we're talking about right here. And here's
How are we doing on time?
Yeah.
the soccer field right there. So we have to come in through here. I know Brooks. So yeah, so right about there, right there. Yeah. So
Just a thought.
worth a look.
Yeah, I mean, when we get together, if it's going to be restarted, we look at. I think everything's on the table.
Correct.
Oak Street was it's like 33 acres flat.
Yeah.
Yes, there is some wetlands here and there, but you could put up a very visible building from Oak Street that you can get into, but you've got to go out a different way.
Yeah, you'd have to. That's a conversation you'd have to get into DPW being involved to make sure they're plowing access, because they don't. The only thing they plow in the park in the wintertime is access to the water and sewer stations that they have to monitor 3 times a day, 24/7. So they plow to those areas. They don't plow anything else in the park. They plow to where they got to go, and that's the extent of it. So.
So if the building committee is paused for a long time, let's just say 6 months, 12 months, I don't know. This body and the Parks Commission, we're charged with the needs of older adults and the needs of, recreation. Parks Commission, their conversations can be had, questions can be submitted to the chair or the COA director or the Parks director. So if the community is thinking of things, you don't have to sit on them forever. You can just submit them. We can have agenda items. We can talk more. The purpose of the building committee was really to oversee a feasibility study and then later to oversee construction project along with City Hall. So just talking about issues can certainly be done here. Thank you, John, so much.
Thank you for the time.
And thanks for starting the collaboration, John and
we're
Cynthia.
yeah,
That's fun.
and we'll continue to meet because I think it's important. Even though the budget dollars don't reflect moving quite as fast as we need to, I think continuing the planning in place to get something done is important. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the
Thanks,
time.
John.
Have a good one. See you on the golf course.
Yes.
I know. Happy to get a road trip.
All right, we'll move to the director's report.
Okay, so I don't know why I didn't make enough copies, but people can share and then the report will go to the Secretary Leslie and she can share. So last time I reported on quarters 1 and 2, so July 1st through December. And now I'm reporting a little bit more than quarter 3, so through April 13th. This is the non-general fund report of our expenditures. In terms of deposits, I just have a number. I didn't get a chance to make a table for you all, but so in gifts and in donations, the van donations account and the fitness donations account, where all the class fees and van rides go, the gift account, that is almost 29,000 for the year since July 1st in revenue, but for next time, I'll work up a table for that and then we can compare it with last year. That does not count the formula grant, which has almost all the way come in. They still owe us something, their last payment. Okay, in terms of expenditures, so if you look all the way over to the balance column, I can just go through and kind of give you a general picture of where we're at. So in terms of instructors, we have enough balance left to see us through the end of the year. We might not spend it all just due to some changes in our programming. And then in terms of catering, we're going to have a lot left over because we're not going to do that annual picnic in the park. When I broke my wrist and then got sick, that was my planning time for that. But also we were thinking that September might be a good time. So we're going to revisit the concept and we'll come back to you because we looked to the board for a theme for that the first year. The first year, what we did, and this is more of a programming conversation than a budget conversation, but the idea was to bring board members and city officials to an event and talk with people and schmooze and kind of talk about needs while people were eating. And it didn't really happen. People stuck to their own knitting and didn't really mix with everybody. And the second year it rained and we were indoors. So we kind of want to regroup and think about what is it for? The first year it was a grant and people didn't have to pay anything. The second year it was our regular funding and we asked people to pay a small amount. The other factor is that we did that post New Year's big party at the Keystone and we our appetite was sort of sated for that for now. So, that's why we have funds left there.
That money can carry over.
And that money can carry over. That grant is a carryover grant that until June 2032, we are spending and rolling over. And it's really important because at any time, especially with budget cuts, the city could decide not to float the funds until the state pays them. In many cities and towns, the senior centers have to have carryover or they can't make their expenses because sometimes the state doesn't pay until April, all of the money for the grant, for the year starting July 1st. And just going down here, the only other major thing I would say is that we decided not to do a direct mail to everybody of a certain age like we did. I think the last one we did was either 2024. Yeah, right now, because doing a Medicare 101 kind of presentation, we had thought about doing it in the spring when Blue Cross is running around doing them at all the senior centers. We're going to wait until LifePath comes in September to do the Medicare 101. And in advance of that, we'll do our big mailing. But we also kind of wanted to wait because we didn't know what was happening with everything and what ages to target for what. Mailing is so expensive now. We want to make sure there's a good purpose behind a direct mailing. And we can talk more about direct mailings and why we would use them. The other thing I was trying to find out is why can't we have a flyer that goes in the city census? Many cities and towns do for various purposes, like program evaluation of the COA or questions about a new senior center or whatever. And we've always been told no. Our new city clerk was going to look into that. Well, why? And I haven't heard back about it. So if that's ever a possibility, we could utilize that too. So of our annual budget that we budget with non-city funds of almost $70,000 for the year, we've expended about half of that. And of course, more than half of the year has gone by, but those are some of the reasons why, we haven't expended that whole amount. And that's actually fine. Also our senior tax work-off fixed our soft seating. So we didn't have to buy the soft seating. I thought we were going to have to buy this year. So, but we do at some point. The back just shows you the personnel side of that because part of the personnel is paid under the formula grant. So we're on target there. We'll expend everything that, was budgeted for that. In terms of the general fund, the internal auditor's on vacation. So the last one I have is through February, showing that we were generally around 60 to 67% expended in our various line items on the general fund. So when I get a freshie on that, I'll bring that back to you. This one is out of date. And she did give me a draft of the general ledger, which allows me to go through every account and tick off, what's been deposited and what's been expended on the internal auditor's end. I double check that against all our spreadsheets to make sure we've expended and deposited what each other thinks we have. So that is ongoing. So yeah, when I come back with the final budget report, I'll have more for you. Any questions on FY26?
You mentioned formula grant. That's the one where they pay us so much per senior.
$16
Is
per.
that state or federal?
So that's state. And
So
that's,
are there any rumblings yet about what might happen with that?
Yeah.
The state's in no better shape than the rest of us.
okay, so very important. So it was in the governor's budget. Mass Councils on Aging advocated to stay at level funding, so the governor put in level funding. House Ways and Means passed $16. So now it's up to Senate Ways and Means to take a look at it. So anybody who wants to can contact Senator Vilas's office to say whether or not they support the $16 an hour.
That'd be,
It's
1 hour per
once a
person.
year per person age 60 plus. Yep. And that's what we want. It's very important. And the reason why it's very important, I'll go into in a minute.
I'm a new volunteer for Easthampton Neighbors Board of Directors, and they're going to be doing a door hanger as part of the proceeds from their fundraisers. They're going to be hanging things on everyone 55 and older based on their address directory. So as a volunteer, I would be willing to take your mailing and include it with the door hanging, or if you could get it in printed in a similar fashion as a door hanger, and ask Easthampton neighbors if they would be willing, while we're hanging the ones for Easthampton neighbors, can we hang the one for the senior center?
Good idea.
And then that way that money would be still available for something else.
They need volunteers to hang those on the doors.
They do. So anyone who's interested in volunteering, please let me know.
That's 6,000 people. I don't know how many doors that is.
I don't know, but I know that it's going to be like a campaign, like over a couple of months. So it's supposed to be
It's
like,
more than 3,000 because if you've got 2 per household.
right. But one household only needs one door hanger. So, if there could be 2 living in a household, they're only going to get
Right.
one hanger on the door from each organization.
A volunteer.
Okay, awesome.
Maybe I'll walk it.
Thank you.
Patrick,
I just missed, maybe you said it, I'm just curious about the tickets. What's the?
Oh, yeah.
here? What's
We
up
did
with
some really awesome things that cost $40 a ticket.
Awesome.
Okay.
But it's okay because, obviously we have surplus on
Okay.
other line items. But yeah, there was a decision made. We got to take advantage of these really incredible things. So many.
tickets for seniors to go to a function.
Yeah.
That's what I was
So
trying
we
to, that's what I
underwrite
was
the-
trying to understand.
Yeah, we underwrite the cost
Okay.
of these field
Okay.
trips. Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Can't even, I don't even know. I'll look and I'll let you guys know.
Yeah. We did the Silver Cord Bowl for Christopher Heights, and they really loved that at Smith, and it wasn't that expensive. So I recommend that if you guys don't go. So,
All right, excellent.
We're ready
Okay,
to go.
next is, spending freeze. All right, when I put 10 minutes on the agenda, that was when it was a different situation. So the mayor has people heard that the mayor issued a spending freeze for FY26? Well, I had to go in and clarify. We have funds that are not general fund funds that are already budgeted, that are already in process. I mean, we have a replacement Tai Chi instructor and I wasn't going to be able to employ that person because I wouldn't be able to write a new purchase order. We clarified that the revolving funds, gift account, formula grant accounts, where we've budgeted that money for the year, he's not asking us to freeze those. So very simply, we can continue operating through June 30th. And then I also clarified, can we fill up the vans at DPW with fuel? Because that could be a supply of material that's over $250. And so far, it sounds like yes. So we can keep operating. So that is not a 10-minute conversation. It would have been a 10-minute conversation, although it did lead me to do things like pull staff out of trainings because professional development was frozen. Yeah.
So just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
Spending freeze applies to non-city revenue.
Spending freeze applies to the general fund, but non-general fund revenue was referenced in the memo. And so I had to go in and clarify that. Because you wouldn't have been able to operate Nonotuck Park, like the camps and stuff, so.
It's the opposite of what you said. What did you say, Leslie?
Non-city.
Non-city funds are not frozen.
Well, it depends. But for the Council on Aging, our non-city funds are not frozen because first of all, we generate the revenue for those revolving accounts to pay for the programming and supplies, is what he said. And the formula grant is our formula grant that we've already budgeted to spend, as you see here, and that is not frozen. And that was a miscommunication.
Perfect.
So, but anybody who has any questions about that, you can submit your questions to me and I can see if I can get them answered. All right,
That's good.
next.
And the 27 budget.
Okay, the FY27 budget. So is there anybody here who has not heard that the city government is looking to go to city council with an override? Okay, so what does that mean? I can't tell you sitting here today exactly what the Council on Aging's response as a department would be if the override did not pass. There's nothing ready for the public yet. What is happening is that we've been asked to think of some scenarios or a scenario. What would happen if the budget was cut? And then what would happen if the budget was severely cut because an override didn't pass? It would already be cut anyway. So in the first scenario, what I did was I said, then we won't spend any money that isn't on personnel. But that's only like $1,200 or $1,300 for mileage and for some building repair to supplement what DPW can do. So that wasn't that much. So what's happening is that tomorrow my scenario is due. On the 27th, I have a meeting with the internal finance team for our department where they'll hear my scenario that I would prefer. And then after that, the quote budget task force will make decisions on how each department would be cut if there wasn't an override. What the mayor said to me is that he would like department heads to make the decision about how their department should be affected. But I think a decision could come from outside us that says what we have to do and not do. But I can give you a general idea of what I'm proposing. So what I'm proposing is that we were told 9% of our general fund amount would be potentially cut as a thought. And it's a lot. So
that's with the override?
Without.
Okay.
So there are various ways you could cut that. You could not increase people's pay for the next year. You could reduce people's hours. You could do a number of things, but we have the possibility of putting more of our staffing on our formula grant. As you can see here, there are things that we could cut or we could divert to the revolving account. We could not have events with catering where we have to subsidize so much of the cost of the meal. We could not go to trips where we're subsidizing the cost, a trip to Smith College and walking around Northampton, to go to the art museum for free is very different than taking people all the way over to UMass for a concert that costs $40 or whatever. There's ways that we could reduce, but I'll tell you, no matter what happens, we're going to be reducing transportation in some way. We're going to be, if we have to reduce staffing, not just move them to the grant, the personnel that potentially would get reduced it might be one person, it might be two people, or it might be like an across the board kind of thing. At the amount we're talking about, I don't think we're talking about closing the senior center for a day. I think it's going to be more like figuring out how to prioritize the things that people need to weather the financial storms they're already experiencing outside the senior center, and to deal with all the issues they're already dealing with, to help the senior center weather this financial storm and be there on the other side of it. But there are things that could go away that could make people really unhappy. So I did ask Crystal to take a look at my sort of draft scenario without a lot of detail in it, in terms of how do we want to talk to the public about what's happening. So assuming that this scenario or a similar scenario is what the finance team and the mayor approved to present to the city council, then we're going to have to start talking to the public about what are they potentially going to lose. So I did ask Crystal comments on that.
So South Hadley cut their 40-hour-a-week outreach worker, and they're in the process of looking for a new executive director, and they want the responsibilities of that outreach worker to be completed by the new executive director, and they want to have volunteers also help with applications like having been a social worker at a council on aging and having been an assistant director at a council on aging, and knowing how many fuel assistance applications and how many public benefit applications you do on a daily basis. it seems not it wouldn't have been my choice. And I think with the amount that we have, like 1.5 people, don't we?
We don't. We have one 35-hour person, and now we have a volunteer shine counselor who's doing some additional hours. But if you look at, let's just say that 30 hours of Ashley's week is 1-to-1 with clients. My week is 35 hours. So if you wanted me to be the outreach worker and social worker, I'm not doing anything else. Now I'm the social worker and outreach worker unless we're going to severely reduce services. And I'll tell you that Westhampton, Southampton, and other towns are sending us more and more people, not necessarily because they can't handle it. I'm not sure of that, because the particular person that we have has developed the expertise. So some of that is like, what do the particular staff people offer and how do they serve? You know, of course, you can't make all your financial decisions based on the actual people that you have in house.
Is there a priority for Easthampton residents before we
When it
start?
comes to
sending this out?
outreach?
Yes.
No. We're kind of like, I wouldn't call us a county seat at all, but we're kind of a hub for certain things, just like our folks go to many other senior centers and use their programming.
Leslie, then Tom? No, okay.
Cindy, sometimes it's hard to put this in perspective, but our total budget for the senior center is what, 175?
So our total budget of the general fund,
Total.
you are thinking old days is, so for FY26, the staffing budget is just about $284,000. And the budget for next year, with all increases intact for staffing, was going to be somewhere around 296.
All right, let's call it 300 for a round number. I believe the city budget, total city budget is something like
65 million.
$65 million. $300,000 is a rounding error on 65 million. And I know we have to be careful. Can't say, let's point fingers at these departments because their budgets are bigger, but 10% cut across the board is a much bigger hit to an organization like ours than it is to, I don't think it's relative to each department. A 10% cut can have a lot bigger impact on a $300,000 budget than it does on an $18 million budget. And I'm not so sure how we get that put in perspective for everyone. And the services that are provided to this population of Easthampton for $300,000.
Oh, I could
I
clarify.
don't know how you put a
something.
price tag on that.
I could clarify one thing.
Yes.
So what I was told in lay people's terms, so I don't know how an accountant would put this or the auditor, the percentages given to each department had some kind of parity in them. So they weren't the same for each department. It was, how much are you as a department contributing to the deficit? And then it was sort of based on that. So it might be different. I don't know. I've heard it said different ways.
I just want to, it'll be in our minutes, it'll be in our meeting information, if you will. I just think that should be out there to the public, that on a $65 million budget, the budget for the senior center is $300,000.
And statewide, senior center budgets range from 0.5% to 1% of budgets. They're not more than 1% of any municipal budget.
So 1% would be 650,000.
So
And how
this is,
many people are we serving?
so this is 0.5%.
Right.
COA budget is 0.5% of the total city budget.
Right.
Just
Put it in
to
perspective.
put it in perspective.
So it should be the lower your budget is in the city budget, the less you get cut. In theory.
So I would suggest that as documents are released that are hopefully explaining in detail, that people take a look at them to see what's happening with multiple departments. And there are instances where there were going to be major cuts. I'm forgetting which town right now, but the COA board of one town went to city council and said, look at this huge cut the Council on Aging is going to bear. It's going to make it totally dysfunctional. Would you please adjust? And then some conversations started up, and, you know, I don't know how it shook out, but, you know, there is room for people to advocate, always room to advocate.
And just to put another spin on that, if the city eliminated the COA, they wouldn't, the $300,000 wouldn't benefit the city hardly at all. But yet the impact of that to those residents,
Be exponential.
yeah, exactly.
Would it be inappropriate to have an in-house advocacy section in our newsletter stating some of these facts and figures that were just brought up?
So we're allowed to educate. We are allowed to educate. We can't advocate for anything that's on a ballot in the newsletter, because what you're doing is you're putting your opinion in front of people who can't get away from it. Certainly I could be interviewed in the newspaper, and because you can choose to read the paper, but so yes, we can put facts and figures, and we can put impacts out there.
And I think we have to be careful that we're not trying to say, hey, instead of looking at us, why don't you look at police or fire? We're not doing that at all. But
Right,
we're just trying to put in perspective what the cuts mean to the senior center.
exactly. All righty.
Just
1 minute.
Let's frame it another way. Thinking of the senior population in Easthampton, it means that a third of the residents of Easthampton would be affected in the worst case scenario, Tom, that you just described. So that's a large percentage of people.
And it could be our most vulnerable, especially if we're not
exactly.
able to provide the assistance with the public benefit applications and things that people cannot do on their own, or they can do on their own, but they don't qualify if they do because they just miss something and don't follow up, or they really need that advocacy aspect that the outreach worker provides.
And I know sometimes people over 55 don't think of themselves as seniors, but they're classified as that. Over 70 don't think they're seniors. But one of those statistics that came from that UMass report was that in the year 2030, which isn't that far away, 40% of Easthampton residents will be over 55.
Exactly.
And just look at West Hampton and what's happened there. They're already at 40%. So people's wallets, you know, really, they're thinking about their wallets. So, yeah.
Yep. 3 minutes.
All righty, thank you for bringing that up. Some good points came out of that.
Places to go.
All righty, and then new business COA membership announcement?
Yes, so Pat Krusco, who has applied to be a COA board member, was, so right now her appointment is at the appointment committee part of the process. When is that, Pat?
That's 9 o'clock.
So if anybody wants to go tonight at 5:30 to support, or you just want to tune in online, Pat's appointment is moving.
And I did want to mention just the forum that we had last week, was it?
April 8th.
April 8th, yes. Well attended, 70-some people were there. And thank you to Deborah for bringing the idea to the table and the staffing. I was at the door when people were leaving, and everyone, I did not hear a negative word about it. They took lots of things away from it. They wished it were longer. They would like to have follow-up on it. And I ran into a couple people in the city since then, and somebody where I play pickleball over in New Hampshire, she works over there, and Cindy had just wonderful things to say about it. So it was really a well-done forum and well attended, and I loved it. I even was writing down things that to take back with me. So thank you for putting that together.
Yeah.
It was marvelous. You have anything else to say?
I would just say thank you to the church, Easthampton Congregational Church. Without them, we couldn't have fit that many people in there. And also, we are having a follow-up conversation with Pioneer Valley Memory Care Initiative, and also somebody who works on, a physician who helps people navigate chronic illness, to talk about what else, how could we follow up and keep having the conversation. Yep.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.